that she gave me, well, she talked to me about buying 7 candles and setting up my altar to protect myself, spiritually protect myself. And that's when I bought all these candles, and I literally lit them that same day. And then this guy gets pushed out of my phone. And since I've done that, and I understand the prayer, I pray more religiously than I've ever done before. Those kind of things happen, and I really believe it's me being protected.
Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, I really honestly feel, from talking to guests and stuff like this, as long as I have been doing, that, even talking to somebody, if they have something going on, with demons or whatever, they can, attach to you.
No, absolutely. I mean, I could tell you countless times. There was sitting on this very same porch. I'm on the right-hand side. One conversation I had with a guy was sitting on the left-hand side next to the door. And I'm talking to this guy. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning. And he's talking about these negative entities that affect him. And 2 blackbirds, 2 crows. Crows don't fly at night. Anybody who knows anything about crows, you don't see them at night. They literally land on this power line that runs right in front of my house. They land right there. They don't start squawking or nothing. They just land there and start looking at me. And I'm like, okay. And I tell him while we're talking. And again, I think I've always had that spirit in me that protects me. But I think now it's kind of like on steroids, because I understand how to activate it and use it. But they just sit there, and they're just like straight up looking at me. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, hey, bro, I feel uncomfortable. I'm like, hey, bro, I'm going to get off the phone with you, man. I'm getting sleepy. I'm going to give you a holler later. That's my example. I'm going to give you a holler later, man. He's like, okay, DW, man, you're so cool. I appreciate you taking out time to talk to me. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. I'm going to holler at you later. I get off the phone, right? 2 days later, I'm back on the porch. I'm doing a radio interview. I was doing Darkness Radio, and I'm talking to Dave Schrader, and there's a shadow that walks across the street, because my house is at a crossroads. It's on a corner, which is a crossroads. From right to left, walk straight across the street while I'm talking to Dave. And I don't say anything while I'm on the air. I'm just talking to him. I see it walk across the street. And we go to break, and he's like, hey, you doing all right? I was like, bro, there's a shadow across the street. And he's like, what? And I'm like, there's a shadow across the street, Dave. Like, it just, and I tell him the story. He's like, hey, for the rest of this time that you're on break, go pray. And I was like, all right. And I go pray, and I come back, and I finish the interview. But that was right after I talked to him. So I know for a fact that people have things on them, and they have things attached to them. I've had where I would do my live streams on YouTube, and I would take phone calls. And it's unscreened phone calls. You call me on Skype, I answer the phone. And these unscreened phone calls, some people will call, and all the knobs, like the digital knobs, so I run a program called Voice Me the Banana, and I run another program called Audacity. The volume knobs on the screen would move on their own. You understand? You set the program up, and you do radio, so you know how you have the equalizers on your screen.
Oh, yeah.
Those equalizers will start moving. I'm not touching nothing, man. I'm sitting back with a headset on, smoking a cigar. My feet are up on a table. I'm leaned back in my chair, and I look over, and they're moving. And it's just, people call, they start moving. Some people call, they don't move. Other people call, they move. And I had one guy call, tell me stories, and they started moving. The next day, and it's, my little studio is right off my kitchen. The very next day, I go into the little studio to kind of to record, and I'm sitting there. I'm home alone. My kids aren't with me, and I'm recording, and I feel a drop of water fall on my wrist. And this room is off the kitchen. So if imagine being in a room, maybe 7 by 10, and behind you to your right, you're sitting at a desk. Behind you to your right, about 4 feet over, is the doorway that leads to the kitchen, right? In that room, there's no water running through that room. There's no pipe that runs above. This house is raised. All the plumbing is under the bottom of the house. Like, literally droplets of water falling on my wrist. And the first time it happened, Gary, I'm like, what the hell? So I get up, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm trying to justify it, which this is what happens to anybody. I'm trying to justify the whole situation. Like, okay, maybe there's a leak, a roof leak or something, right? So I climb up on a chair. The only thing above me is a lamp, like a light that kind of hangs down. Climb up on a chair, touch the light, nothing. I'm looking around, nothing. There's nowhere that water came from. So I'm like, all right, well, I ain't going to worry about it. I start recording again. Another drop hits me. I'm like, okay, this is some freaky stuff. And I started praying, and it stopped. So, I've had a number of things happen to me, man. A number of things.
Well, water is better than having like drops of blood or something coming down and dropping on you. That would be really, really
Oh,
scary.
I would have moved.
Yeah.
I would have moved.
Hey, now...
I would have packed up that night and left.
Yeah, now, hey, on the very first... When I first brought you on, you were talking about, Bigfoot with, your friend.
Mm-hmm.
I had... And I talked about it last night, but I had an encounter back around 2002 up in the Canadian Rockies. A friend of mine who just got done, he's a doctor, he just got done doing his internship, he just opened up a practice, and before he actually opened it up to the public, he wanted to, he was avid photographer like I was. We decided to go, from the Seattle-Tacoma area to, the Canadian Rockies on a road trip, go take pictures, and we did an old World War II internment camp. We had a hike in off the road about 2 miles through the forest. It was all overgrown, even the road going to the old internment camp, which virtually it was nothing there anymore. But we thought my friend thought he saw a bear, maybe about 1,000 yards away or 100 yards away. I can't remember. And he goes, "Look at that huge bear!" And I picked up my camera, had it on my neck, with a strap, and I'm looking at this bear, and then I realized this sucker is like not a bear. It has super long arms, had hair like you wouldn't believe, but it had a face kind of like not like a human. It was a lot fatter than a human, with a lot of hair on it, but some bald spots on the face. It didn't see us at the start, but then when it saw us, it put out the loudest scream I've ever heard in my life. And me and him just like immediately took off running, and we ran back about those 2 miles back to the car, and I'm getting in the car, I was so scared I peed my pants. That's how scared I was. And my friend's opening the car door, and there it was, or its mate or whatever, there it was about 25 feet away from the car, still in the woods, looking at us, bending about a 25-foot tree over like a bow till it snapped. And then it screamed at us. And, at that point, my friend's just getting this leg in the car. I'm stepping on the gas. That creature took a rock, threw it, put a big dent on the passenger side of the front fender. And I tell you something, unless you ever seen one in person, so many people say they don't exist. I've talked to a lot of people who want to be on the show, and I screen them when they say, well, I'm a Bigfoot hunter. And I'll say, well, okay, where have you gone hunting? Well, I haven't, but I've done a lot of research for 20 years. Hey, I don't put them on the show. But I've had a guy on the show that said he ran into a Bigfoot, and it was really friendly. Well, this sucker wasn't friendly at all. I'm sure if we didn't take off running like we did, we probably would never made it out of the forest. That's why I was kind of curious, like with your friend, in the house, my feeling is they're not friendly creatures. Uh-oh. Hopefully we didn't lose him again. Okay. Well, maybe we did. Oh, okay. Yes, we did. Well, boy, I don't know. I know he's... Okay. I know he was talking on a cell phone. So, yeah, I think we lost you there, Dark Waters.
Man, I don't know what that is. That's crazy.
Well,
that's just insane.
We're talking evil things.
But I did hear your story.
Yeah. You still there? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me clearly? We good?
Yeah, we're good now.
All right. Well, I'll tell you this. Two things. I have heard some people tell me stories that are friendly, but the overwhelming amount of those stories have been fall into two categories. One is it's aggressive. Yours was kind of super aggressive. It's aggressive to get you out of the area. And then the other ones are it's super duper aggressive, almost manic and crazy and like psychopathic, like straight up, I'm going to kill you if you don't leave type situation. And so aggressive and hyper aggressive is how I would categorize it. I would think the worst one that I've been told was told to me by a guy named Steve Kimbrough, who was an engineer, a construction engineer out of Arkansas. And he was training a young guy, and they were doing in transmission line design engineering, where you kind of go out and route or scout a transmission line. They kind of scout the route of the line through the woods to figure out how they're going to get it to go from point A to point B, right?
Oh, yeah.
So him and this guy are out scouting a line, and they're trying to figure out, this is in North Arkansas. I can't remember. It's like off the White River. I can't remember the exact name of the town because he told me this 2 years ago, but it's very, very North Arkansas. And they'll probably come to me before the story's over. But they're out scouting a line and driving to the woods, park the truck, and they start trying to figure out how they're going to get this line across the river. So they're down at the river's edge, and they're trying to figure out the perfect location. They're kind of looking at soil and saying, okay, well, the soil is not going to be good because this is clay and shell, and we need to back it up a little bit. We're going to need to put the pole here, and we're going to have to span across the river. And as they're there, they hear a grunt. Now, imagine being downhill at a riverbank, and then uphill, you hear a grunt in a tree line.
It's not
grunt in a tree line.
It's not a good place where you can run away, I tell you that.
Mm-mm. They hear a grunt in the tree line. And Steve has been in the woods his whole life. I mean, a very long time, super long time. I mean, talking about a 45-year career doing construction engineering for multiple power companies in Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama. This guy is like a woodsman, right? He's the kind of guy where he'll go out, scout a line, and come back with $1,000 worth of ginseng that he can make money off of. That's why he really enjoyed doing it, because he knew how to make money off of nature. So he was working his job, but he was making extra money picking ginseng and doing everything else. So he's familiar with Bigfoot. But at this point in time, Steve was pretty old when this was going on, and he wasn't as nimble as this other guy. So they're out there, they hit the grunt, and Steve always carried a sidearm with him, even though it was against company policy. You're not supposed to have a weapon, but in the woods, he said you always needed a weapon. Well, they're out there, they hit this grunt. The other guy is pretty young. He played football for LSU. He had just become an engineer, and he's sitting there saying, well, what was that noise? And Steve was like, well, we need to leave. Then they start hearing whistling, like birds kind of chirping, and whistling. They hear one from one side of the river, and then they hear one on the other side. And then they hear one from, I guess the best way to explain it is if you and I are standing on a riverbed and we're facing the woods, to the left of us is where they heard the grunt. Behind them, directly across the river, is where they heard the first whistle. Then back to the left of them where they heard the grunt, they heard the next whistle. Then to the right of them, they heard another whistle. Now, Steve knows that, okay, this is these creatures communicating. So he's like, hey, we need to leave. We need to go right now. The guy's like, well, no, I don't think we need to go. We need to try and figure out how we're going to. He's like, no, we need to leave. They hear a growl, like a vocalization that Steve told me. He said, James, he said, man, it was so loud that the vibrations started in my feet. He was like, I felt the vibrations like in the sole of my shoes. He said my bones actually vibrated. Not just like, he's like, my bones felt like they were rattling. And then they see this thing step out of the wood line, and it has a log in his hand. It's not like it's just stepping out